The Trial of the Chicago 7 has been out on Netflix for a few days now. It was written and directed by Aaron Sorkin with a stunning ensemble cast. Eddie Redmayne, Sacha Baron Cohen, Jeremy Strong, John Carroll Lynch, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, Mark Rylance, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Frank Langella, and Michael Keaton. Wow. It's based on a true story of a trial that has been historically considered as one of the most political and at the same time most chaotic trials held in America, partly because of the reach of the issue at hand, partly how universal it was, partly because of the bias of the prosecution and judge, partly because of the nature of the accused. It all had to do with the Democratic National Convention in 1968 held in Chicago. In the face of the Vietnam War swallowing more and more American lives, a huge number of especially younger people went to Chicago to protest peacefully but technically illegally as they were not given permits. There's a line said in the opening of the film: "We hope we can get permission, but whether we do get it or not, we're coming." Loads of very passionate people, young, hot blooded, protesting a huge issue for that country at that time. And eventually, violence did erupt. There were riots in the streets, clashes with the police, tear gas was used. Put it like this: if you just go back a few months to the Black Lives Matter protest and, crucially, the police response to that, it will give you a good idea of what we're talking about here. 8 people deemed as the leaders of the protest are arrested and charged with conspiracy to provoke violence, and they stand trial. Eventually, one of them is removed from the trial, hence the title Chicago 7. And so the story is mostly this courtroom drama with occasional flashbacks giving us a better idea of what actually went down in a visual way rather than just from the dialogue. Now, I know these types of movies are not for everybody. Some people find them boring, but typically the success of the film of this type rides on the writing and the performances. Fortunately, both of these elements have been executed fairly well here. Let's start with the writing. As can be expected, Sorkin is excellent at his quick, snappy, engaging dialogue. He does definitely have a style of his own, which is evident if you see more of his work, but I think it fits very well here. Put it like this: his previous film, Molly's Game, I didn't like as much. I thought the script needed a bit more reining in. It seems like for this one, he's more controlled, which works for the best. Second, the performances. It's an ensemble cast and a proper one at that. There really isn't one role which you can say, this one's the lead. A lot of the major players have similar screen time, similar amounts of dialogue, and pretty much all of them are great and believable in their roles. Having said that, I do have a couple of highlights. Sacha Baron Cohen will definitely be the most memorable one because of his character, but I do think he lends a lot of surface level humor with the undertone of actual seriousness to the role, which was crucial. He makes it work. Eddie Redmayne could be considered more of an emotional anchor to the film, and he's pretty good as well, although he does fall into the archetype of a typical Sorkin protagonist. But then again, that's more on the writing side of things than the actual acting. Mark Rylance and Joseph Gordon-Levitt are splendid as the two opposing lawyers. Lots of emotion between them, and I just want to say I'm very happy that Gordon-Levitt is back doing movies after the few years break that he took from his career. It's just good to have him back on the screen. And last but not least, for me personally, the most impressive performance was Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who impressed me with how powerful of a presence he projected, despite being a bit on the side in comparison to some of the other actors. He just emanates this strength, confidence, and dignity in the face of oppression without having to say a word, really. Just the way he carries himself and facial expressions and just that air, that vibe was amazing to behold, especially after having seen him just last year in Watchmen, where he played a completely different character. I wouldn't have said he was capable of having this much range, but here we are. There are some criticisms to be made about the film as well. There are some changes from the actual history of the trial, which is to be expected, in particular the ending, which here is a bit on the nose. Sorkinisms in the dialogue, I mean, that's kind of always what you get from Aaron Sorkin, but I do think that he was more restrained here than in some of his other works, as I already said. And I personally didn't take issue with his style of writing this time around, but I can see some people would. And finally, there's been a criticism about poor handling of a female presence in the film. There is one character added in that was fabricated for the movie, and she feels very much like a token character, not particularly interesting or bringing anything to the table, just to have a lady in there. And I think it is fair to criticize even putting her in there because, I mean, yeah, the film otherwise is distinctly male, but that's what it was in real life. Those were the players of the story. Putting in half-hearted token female just for the sake of it, it just makes it look cheap. And honestly, I think Sorkin shouldn't have even bothered. It's unnecessary, and I think it does a bit more harm than good. However, these are all minor grips with an otherwise solid film. It's engaging, it's very timely given this year's protests and racial tensions in America, especially. It's well written, well acted, and for the most part, pretty intelligent. Just good stuff.